point, Ted.
Right there.
Black, 405 the building, pick up EMS.
They head on a point to the plane, okay? You can't see the plane there.
Can't see the light. The office is right at the center. Right at the center.
Any comment? Ellos su corazón.
Secuestro,
Do you have anything to say?
Secuestro.
Right.
Put your head in the rear of that engine. Okay, come.
Please.
Yeah.
Numbers from that aircraft that's
Any Spanish-speaking guys working tonight?
Philippines, right?
What did it say?
West.
The engines.
Another accused big-time foreign drug trafficker is waiting to go on trial in this country, and some influential people back home in Honduras are not happy about it. Richard Schlesinger reports tonight on the hard realities of narco-politics and how it's impeding the war on drugs.
In a country as poor as Honduras, it is easy to be a Robin Hood. These tobacco workers are employed by Ramon Matta, a man they consider a hero, a man U.S. and Honduran authorities consider one of the biggest cocaine dealers in the world, and one of those responsible for the murder of an American drug enforcement agent.
The major drug traffickers do take some resources in order to generate support in communities.
Before he was captured and brought to the United States last month, Matta, who was reportedly worth billions, spread his money around, becoming known as a rich man who cared about the poor. When this neighborhood in rural Honduras needed a school, the only person rich enough to build it was Ramon Matta. Now, every child here sits in a class with the name of a suspected drug lord painted on each desk. Matta also created jobs in this town as the owner of a cigar factory.
Sentí como que fuera uno de mis hijos.
Amparo Gallo, who rolls cigars at Matta's factory, says, "I felt like he was one of my children." Even the factory's union leader says Matta gives toys to children and gifts on Mother's Day.
Al Día de la Madre, a todas las madres les da sus regalos.
But while he was carefully cultivating his Robin Hood image, the Hondurans believe Matta spent millions buying up legitimate businesses, increasing his influence over this country's frail economy. Sources here say Matta had become so powerful he already controlled several national legislators and was in a position to influence the upcoming elections. Officials here were worried that if Matta was not arrested and soon, he would never be brought to trial. The country's military leader even came to consider Matta a threat to national security.
With the social platform he was developing, plus his money, I think he could soon even get to be president of Honduras.
Matta's popularity was so great that when he was arrested, there were violent demonstrations and the U.S. Embassy was attacked. In Washington, Matta's capture is considered a victory in the war on drugs. But in rural Honduras, Matta is still winning another war for the hearts and minds of the people. Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, Danlí, Honduras.
The Colombia cocaine cartel now has a new base for smuggling drugs into the United States. It is the country of Honduras. NBC's Brian Ross reports that the man in charge is a fugitive and a billionaire.
This is Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras. And American authorities say the man who lives in this heavily guarded compound on the outskirts of Tegucigalpa, the buildings with the blue roofs, is now turning Honduras into a new and important center in the world of cocaine trafficking. His name is Ramon Matta, a well-known, much-feared, and powerful figure in Honduras, wanted in the United States on drug charges and for escaping from a federal prison in Florida in 1974. After years on the run in Colombia and Mexico, Matta set up operation in Honduras 2 years ago, and authorities say he is now one of the top men in the international cocaine business. Late last year, a huge shipment of cocaine, which authorities say belonged to Matta, was seized in Fort Lauderdale, where it was concealed in a load of hollowed-out mahogany boards shipped from Honduras. It was the largest seizure of cocaine in U.S. history.
Mr. Matta is definitely a world-class player. There's no question about that.
American authorities say a major reason for Matta's success in Honduras has been his long, close ties with the Honduran military. Authorities say at times, Matta has even traveled around Honduras in military aircraft supplied to the Honduran army by the United States. Authorities say Matta has made it a point to hire former top aides to military strongman General Humberto Regalado, and most of Matta's bodyguards come from an elite Army commando squad. General Regalado would not talk to NBC News about Matta. Matta's wealth, estimated at $1 billion, has made him the wealthiest man in Honduras. His white Mercedes is a familiar sight on the streets of Tegucigalpa, where Matta has become something of a folk hero. Matta has gone on television here to denounce American authorities, and he says he has made all his money from emerald mining in Colombia, not cocaine. Even though he is one of the most wanted drug fugitives in the world, Honduran authorities have refused to extradite him, saying Honduran law prohibits the extradition of any Honduran citizen for any crime. When we went to Matta's walled mansion, his bodyguards and his wife charged out and threatened to smash our cameras. His wife said her husband had never even touched 1 gram of cocaine in his life. So in this house, in the capital city of a country that is supposedly one of the United States' closest allies in Latin America, Ramon Matta is living the life of a cocaine prince, safely beyond the reach of American law. Brian Ross, NBC News, Tegucigalpa, Honduras.
There was a dramatic capture today of one of the world's most notorious drug lords, Juan Ramon Matta. He's a Honduran with ties to Colombia's infamous Medellin cocaine cartel. There's much mystery remaining about how and where he was captured, but it is known tonight that he is now being brought to the United States. As NBC's Richard Valeriani reports now, Matta is wanted in this country for murder.
Members of an elite Honduran army unit known as the Cobras struck before dawn. They surrounded and searched Matta's luxurious, heavily guarded compound in Tegucigalpa and said they found a bag of cocaine. Matta's wife, Nancy, protested that the drug had been planted by the searchers. Matta himself was seized somewhere else. It's not clear where, and he's now being brought to this country by federal marshals. Nor is it clear how he was turned over to the U.S., since there's no extradition treaty with Honduras. American officials describe Matta as a major figure in the cocaine traffic between Colombia and the United States. They say the largest coke shipment ever seized in this country, 8,000 pounds in Miami last year in hollowed-out furniture, came from Matta. His trademark white Mercedes is well known in Tegucigalpa, where he's lived since reportedly paying $2 million in bribes to get out of a Colombian jail in 1986. His personal worth is estimated at $2 billion. Matta is wanted in the U.S. in connection with the 1985 murder of American anti-drug agent Kiki Camarena in Mexico, and he faces a number of drug charges as well. Because of Matta's links to high-ranking Honduran military officers, American officials say he had the run of the country and conducted his drug operations freely. But now, American law enforcement officials speculate that the Honduran military, stung by widespread reports of their involvement in drug dealing, went after Matta to show that there were no Noriegas in Honduras. Richard Valeriani, NBC News, New York.
The Honduran government declared a state of emergency after the worst anti-U.S. riots ever in that country. At least 5 people were shot to death during the night after 1,500 university students went on a rampage outside the U.S. Embassy in Tegucigalpa. It was unclear who was responsible for the shooting deaths. Some witnesses claimed the first shots appeared to come from the embassy, but U.S. officials denied this. Honduran riot police didn't arrive until the riots were well underway. Today, the U.S. government demanded an explanation for the delay. The anti-U.S. protest began over the arrest Tuesday of an alleged Honduran drug dealer, Juan Ramon Matta. Matta was described by U.S. officials as a kingpin of international drug trafficking. He was picked up outside his home in the Honduran capital, spirited to the U.S., and flown to a federal prison in Illinois to await trial on drug charges.
The man reputed to be the #1 dealer of cocaine to the U.S. now is in the nation's most secure prison. Juan Ramon Matta was seized in Honduras yesterday and rushed to the federal penitentiary in Marion, Illinois, where he's awaiting formal charges. CNN's Charles Feldman has our report.
When he arrived at New York's Kennedy Airport early Wednesday morning, Juan Ramon Matta looked like a man who didn't know what hit him. What hit him was a massive raid by Honduran police on his home in Honduras. From there, Matta was flown to the Dominican Republic, eventually on to New York via Puerto Rico, and is now at the federal prison at Marion, Illinois, this country's most secure federal prison. Officials say Matta is one of the world's most notorious cocaine traffickers, with ties to Mexican and Colombian drug cartels. He is also believed tied to the 1985 torture slaying of U.S. drug agent Enrique Camarena in Mexico. But in a TV interview conducted while he was in a Colombian prison in 1986, Matta scoffed at the notion.
That's impossible, mister. Not even a child would think that. Therefore, I'm innocent.
Matta's arrest was hailed by the U.S. State Department.
We view this as a major successful step in our effort to stem the flow of illegal narcotics trafficking.
Matta has been a difficult person to keep behind bars. He escaped a federal prison in Florida in 1971 and fled Colombia in 1986, reportedly by bribing guards with millions of dollars. Since then, he has been living in Honduras, which was recently challenged to do more about drug trafficking. One U.S. senator who is holding hearings on the problem says the cooperation by Honduras is welcome, but more is needed.
I think all those involved in the narcotics in the anti-trafficking effort are going to be very wary of flashy beginnings which are not followed up by significant amounts of real reform and real enforcement.
Matta came from humble beginnings, but by last year was suspected of shipping thousands of pounds of cocaine to Florida, where they were then seized. In third world countries, some people look up to people like Matta.
In the case of Matta Ballesteros and certainly several other major violators that you see in Central and South America, they're becoming folk heroes.
It is unclear at this time where Matta will go next, although Los Angeles is said to be a strong possibility. There are indictments against him in no fewer than 3 states so far. Charles Feldman, CNN, New York.
Help from Honduras and the Dominican Republic in Matta's capture may have spurred on a new idea from the Reagan administration, a multinational force to fight the Colombian drug cartel. CNN has confirmed that administration officials are thinking about proposing the idea to other countries, and that there's been talk of using military forces to help fight the war on drugs.
Talk at you for a minute.
Sure.
I remember when one of my cousins was an assistant DA in Brooklyn, and he said, that he always used to get very frustrated when, they wouldn't be able to convict somebody that he knew was just a complete...
Mother charge.
Yeah, and I thought, wow, it must really require a great deal of...
We're in jail.
Okay. Self whatever to
self-discipline.
Reach that point of view.
But if you believe in the system, as we do, you believe when it works for you and you believe when it works against you. Right. And if you become frustrated with the system, then you're going to have some very difficult times in the job. It might be time to look for something even less difficult, like Amway.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Richard Schlesinger, who's one of our correspondents, was recently in Honduras working on a story about Matta, and they talked to a lot of peasants and especially poor Hondurans who had either been employed by him or had gotten money from him or whatever, and they just think he's a big hero. And what we sort of need to do is talk about what kind of guy he is and whether they're right or wrong and why and so on. How would you characterize him?
Well, when one talks about a major drug trafficker, one can look at traditional organized crime figures who made considerable money on illegal enterprise, donated very faithfully to the church, and went to church every weekend, buying their way to heaven. Certainly, major drug traffickers do take some resources in order to generate support in communities. The fact remains, however, these major individuals are responsible for violations of law, for the deaths of countless citizens, and one must look very closely at those individuals because the little bit of good they do is offset by the tremendous damage that they do.
So it's like a killer masquerading as Robin Hood.
Certainly, that's exactly what it is. There was a recent case of a clergyman who was arrested for carrying cocaine. The individual said that he did build a kindergarten, he did build a nursery. When his bank records were checked, he did have $22,000 in his accounts to take care of his congregation, but he also had a separate personal account of $3 million. The case, I think, speaks for itself.
What are some of the things that Matta did or has done that led the United States to want to deal with him?
Our law enforcement's first contact with Juan Matta goes back a considerable period of time. Juan Matta Ballesteros was arrested as a pickpocket in New York City. In 1970, Juan Matta Ballesteros was arrested at Dulles International Airport, arriving on flight 542 with 54 pounds of cocaine. In that particular case, he had a false passport, was convicted for having the false passport, was sentenced to 4 years, and was assigned to Eglin Air Force Base. Subsequently walked away from Eglin Air Force Base. His recent arrest was based upon the fact that he was an escaped federal prisoner. Subsequently, we believe that Juan Matta Ballesteros has been responsible for shipping large quantities of cocaine into the United States. Very recently, I met with President Barco of Colombia on another matter, and President Barco commented that he was very pleased that Juan Matta Ballesteros would stand charges because the government of Colombia believes that Juan Matta Ballesteros is a major drug trafficker. And President Barco indicated to me that the government of Colombia had reason to believe that in Juan Matta's latest escape from Colombia, he paid in bribes in excess of $2 million in order to effect that escape. The president indicated that Juan Matta was a corrupting influence in Colombia and was very pleased that Juan Matta would be facing charges.
What about his possible involvement in the killing of Enrique Camarena?
Information has been developed that Juan Matta may have been involved in the killing of Kiki Camarena. That is something that is being pursued, again, because of ongoing judicial action on that case. I really can't expand very much on that.
Were you surprised at the response to Matta's arrest in Honduras? when some people became rather vociferous in their feelings that the United States had either violated his Honduran civil rights or had acted strangely.
No, I certainly have read about the response, and I've also read that some of the response in Honduras was an orchestrated response. So without any first-hand knowledge, it'd be difficult for me to talk about the response in Honduras.
Well, I guess what I meant is that that there are people there, you know, as you say, like with organized crime figures here in the past, where they've been willing to support somebody because of those sort of patronage positions that they took. Do criminals like him buy themselves security or protection, you know, by trying to enlist local communities that way?
Well, certainly it's important for a major trafficker to engender support among the local community. The cocaine barons in Colombia will be found to be building hospitals, donating money to the poor, building zoos for the enjoyment of the citizens. That's part of their mystique. There was a recent interview done on a major trafficking figure in Bolivia, and the people surrounding him called him the king because he was the one who took good care of the community. He is a major figure in drug trafficking circles. It's unfortunate that they do engender support among the local population, but the local population doesn't know about the criminal behavior and alleged criminal behavior with which these individuals are involved.
How bad is this man?
That is for the courts to decide. We believe that we, in effecting the arrest of Juan Matta Ballesteros, have finally brought to the courts an individual who has been violating the laws of the United States, allegedly has been violating the laws of the United States since 1975, in addition to his escape in the early 1970s.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I have to be very careful because, as I say, he has 4 trials pending.
It's quite a few. I was wondering, again, about, you know, the feeling among some Hondurans that he was arrested in a way that violated their constitution.
That, certainly that's the perception down there. But as I understand the arrest, that's not what happened. Juan Matta was turned over to U.S. authorities, I believe, in the Dominican Republic. The arrest procedures were not unusual in that other governments have cooperated over the years in bringing alleged violators to a neutral country where they can be arrested by U.S. authorities. So the procedure was not unusual.
And I just want to ask you, this probably won't get used, but just since we're here, about Carlos Lader, whether or not this is, you know, a big victory for U.S. drug enforcement efforts that Carlos Lader has been found guilty?
I believe the conviction of Carlos Lader is important generally for the U.S. law enforcement effort, but specifically for the international law enforcement effort, because Carlos Lader believed that he could act with impunity, that he could find safe haven, and in fact he didn't find safe haven. The extradition process worked, and this is of great concern in the international community. Now the international community knows that if action is taken against a major trafficker and the investigation is a good investigation, that no amount of intimidation is going to detract from the prosecution and conviction of this major trafficker.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Do you have 1 second?
Sure.
For just,
thought she was absolutely free. She stopped in to see him one day to exchange some money. He said, well, Carrie, you have 3 weeks off now. Where are you going? And she said, oh, we're going down, six of us are going down to the train station tomorrow, and the first train that comes in we're going to take until it gets to a fun place, and then we'll go on.